Think deeply for a moment. Imagine that in a moment of apparent silence, when the world around you seems unchanged, a sharp, subtle, or even crystalline sound arises within your ears. There is no external source, no movement in the room, no mechanical cause that you can point to with certainty. Yet the sound is undeniably real. Many people experience this phenomenon at least once in their lives, and most are taught to dismiss it quickly, labeling it as stress, coincidence, or a simple bodily reaction. But what if this explanation is incomplete? What if this ringing is not a defect but a signal? What if it is not the body malfunctioning, but consciousness communicating? Imagine discovering that this experience has been described, contemplated, and revered for thousands of years across civilizations, mystical schools, and esoteric traditions. Imagine realizing that what you once ignored may actually be one of the oldest forms of communication between the individual soul and the fundamental intelligence of the universe. Today, we begin to unveil this hidden language, and I promise you something important. The final revelation in this journey is the most profound of all, capable of reshaping how you understand reality, awareness, and your own inner nature. This topic resonates deeply with those who feel drawn to the unseen forces of existence, to ancient wisdom, preserved through symbols and silence, to Hermetic teachings that speak of vibration, unity, and cosmic intelligence. It speaks to seekers who sense that reality is far more layered than what is visible, and that spiritual awakening often begins with subtle signs that most people overlook. If you have ever felt that there is something more behind the veil of ordinary perception, then this message is meant for you. Before we go deeper, take a moment to support this work. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, share this video, and write your thoughts in the comments. By doing so, you help this knowledge reach others who are also searching. Stay with me, because what will be revealed here has the power to change the way you interpret your own experiences and the universe itself. Throughout history, sound has never been regarded as a simple sensory occurrence. In ancient civilizations, sound was understood as a creative force. The philosophers of ancient Greece, especially Pythagoras and his followers, taught that the universe is structured through harmony and number. Pythagoras proposed that planets, stars, and even the human soul vibrate according to precise mathematical relationships, forming what later became known as the harmony of the spheres. Although this cosmic music cannot normally be heard with the physical ears, it is believed to be constantly present. From this perspective, the ringing in the ears is not an external intrusion, but an internal tuning. It is as if consciousness briefly aligns with a higher octave of reality. Plato, expanding on these ideas, suggested that the soul carries innate knowledge from a realm beyond the material world. According to him, learning is not the acquisition of something new, but the remembrance of something ancient. When the ears ring, it may represent a moment of recollection, when the soul resonates with truths it has always carried within itself. Similar ideas appear in Eastern traditions. In ancient Indian philosophy, especially in the Upanishads and later yogic texts, there is reference to an inner sound known as nada. This sound is described as the primordial vibration of existence itself. Advanced practitioners reported hearing a continuous high-pitched tone during deep states of meditation. This sound was not considered an illusion, but a sign that awareness was withdrawing from the outer world and attuning to the absolute reality known as Brahman. Hermetic philosophy reinforces this understanding with remarkable clarity. One of its central principles teaches that everything vibrates, that nothing rests, and that movement is the foundation of manifestation. Hermes Trismegistus, whose teachings influenced Western esoteric thought for centuries, emphasized that the universe is mental in nature. From this viewpoint, sound is not merely physical vibration, but a bridge between mind and matter. When the ears ring, it may indicate a moment when the individual mind synchronizes with a deeper universal rhythm. This brings us to the concept of the monad. In Neoplatonic philosophy, particularly in the works of Plotinus, the monad represents the ultimate source of all existence. It is absolute unity, beyond form, beyond division, beyond language. All reality emanates from the monad and eventually seeks to return to it. The human soul, according to this philosophy, originates from this source and descends into material existence, gradually forgetting its origin. Spiritual awakening is described as the reversal of this process. It is the slow reorientation of awareness back toward unity. When the ears ring, especially during moments of introspection, emotional intensity, or spiritual sensitivity, many initiates have interpreted it as a subtle call from the monad itself. Not a voice in the conventional sense, but a vibration, a reminder, a resonance that stirs something ancient within the soul. Carl Gustav Jung, one of the most influential thinkers of modern psychology, introduced the idea of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal an underlying order connecting the psyche and the external world. From this lens, the ringing in the ears is not random. It appears at moments when the conscious and unconscious aspects of the mind briefly align, creating a symbolic event charged with meaning rather than mere chance. Ask yourself this carefully. When this sound appears, what is happening within you? Are you reflecting deeply? Are you emotionally open? Are you confronting a truth about yourself or your life? These moments matter. They are thresholds. They are points where ordinary perception weakens and deeper awareness begins to surface. What we have explored so far is only the foundation. There are layers within this phenomenon that most people never consider. In the next part, we will explore how different frequencies of this ringing have been interpreted across traditions, why the left and right ears carry symbolic meaning, and how ancient seekers learned to respond to this experience consciously rather than fear it. As we continue this journey, it becomes essential to understand that not all ringing in the ears was interpreted in the same way by ancient traditions. Subtle distinctions were carefully observed because initiates believed that consciousness speaks in nuances, not in crude signals. The frequency, intensity, and even the side on which the ringing appeared were seen as meaningful expressions of an underlying intelligence attempting to communicate. In many esoteric schools, high-pitched ringing was associated with elevated states of awareness. It was believed to occur when the mind temporarily transcended ordinary thought patterns and touched a more refined layer of reality. This idea appears again in the writings attributed to the Hermetic corpus, where vibration is described as ascending or descending along invisible scales. A higher frequency was not considered louder, but purer, closer to the source of all things. When such a tone arose, it was seen as an indication that consciousness was momentarily resonating with a higher plane of existence. Lower or heavier ringing, on the other hand, was often interpreted as a signal of internal imbalance. Ancient healers and philosophers did not see this as punishment or error, but as information. The body and the soul were understood as deeply interconnected. If inner harmony was disturbed by unresolved emotion, fear, or excessive attachment to the material world, vibration would reflect that state. Sound, in this sense, was diagnostic, revealing what the rational mind might refuse to acknowledge. The distinction between the left and right ear also carried profound symbolic meaning. In many mystical traditions, the right side of the body was associated with solar energy, logic, outward action, and the conscious mind. The left side was linked to lunar energy, intuition, receptivity, and the unconscious. When ringing appeared predominantly in the right ear, some initiates interpreted it as a call to awareness in the external world, a signal to act, to speak, or to align one's actions with higher principles. When it appeared in the left ear, it was often seen as an invitation to listen inwardly, to pay attention to intuition, dreams, and subtle emotional truths. This symbolic framework finds resonance in the work of Carl Gustav Jung, who emphasized the importance of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. Jung believed that true individuation occurs when these two dimensions of the mind begin to communicate openly. From this perspective, the ringing in the ears becomes a symbolic bridge, a moment where unconscious material rises toward awareness, encoded not in images or words, but in sensation. Ancient Egyptian mystery schools also held sound in high regard. The concept of Heka, the primordial force through which creation itself was spoken into existence, implied that vibration preceded form. Words, chants, and tones were not merely expressive, but generative. Priests believed that specific sounds could align the human being with cosmic order, known as Maat. A spontaneous inner sound, therefore, was never meaningless. It was interpreted as the soul momentarily attuning to cosmic balance. In Buddhist traditions, particularly within certain schools of meditation, practitioners reported hearing a continuous inner tone, as the mind became still. This sound was not chased or analyzed, but observed with equanimity. Over time, it became a point of focus, anchoring awareness beyond discursive thought. The ringing in this context was not the goal, but a signpost indicating that the mind was moving beyond surface-level perception. What is striking across all these traditions is a shared understanding that the universe communicates not only through events and symbols, but through direct inner experience. Modern culture often trains individuals to distrust such experiences unless they can be immediately measured or explained. Yet ancient wisdom insisted that some truths can only be felt, not proven, and that subtle perception is a form of intelligence in its own right. Ask yourself this now. If consciousness is not confined to the brain, if reality is indeed vibrational at its core, then why would communication be limited to words alone? Could it be that the ringing in the ears is a reminder that you are immersed in a living, intelligent field, constantly interacting with levels of reality that the ordinary senses barely register? This understanding shifts the experience from something to fear or ignore into something to observe with reverence. It invites presence rather than panic, curiosity rather than dismissal. The moment the sound arises becomes an opportunity to pause, to breathe, and to reflect on what is unfolding within and around you. Yet this raises an even deeper question. If the ringing is a form of communication, then what is its ultimate purpose? Is it merely a sign of alignment, or does it carry a directive, a call toward transformation? To answer this, we must go further, into the ancient idea that the soul itself evolves through stages of remembrance, guided by subtle signals that become clearer as awareness deepens. In the next part, we will explore how initiates learned to consciously work with this phenomenon, how the ringing was connected to moments of awakening, and why some traditions believed it signaled a turning point in the soul's journey back toward unity. As we move even deeper, it becomes clear that ancient initiates did not see the ringing in the ears as a passive experience. They believed it was an invitation, a threshold, a moment in which the soul is subtly alerted that a transition is taking place within its inner structure. This is why many traditions emphasized stillness when the sound appeared. Not resistance, not distraction, stillness. In the mystery schools of antiquity, especially those influenced by Neoplatonic and Hermetic thought, students were trained to recognize inner signals long before they were taught to interpret external symbols. The ringing in the ears was considered one of these signals. When it appeared, the initiate was encouraged to withdraw attention from the outer world and observe the state of the mind. What thoughts were present? What emotions were surfacing? What truths were attempting to emerge but had not yet taken form? Plotinus taught that the soul moves through layers of reality, ascending or descending based on its degree of awareness. When attention is fully absorbed by material concerns, the soul becomes heavy, fragmented, and forgetful of its origin. When attention turns inward, toward truth, beauty, and unity, the soul becomes lighter, more coherent, and more receptive to the influence of the monad. In this framework, the ringing is not the cause of awakening, but a symptom of alignment. It appears when the soul briefly resonates with its source. This idea is echoed in the writings of Meister Eckhart, the medieval mystic who spoke of a divine spark within the soul. He taught that God is not found through external effort, but through inner silence, where the soul becomes capable of hearing what cannot be spoken. Although Eckhart did not describe ringing explicitly, his emphasis on inner listening aligns perfectly with the idea that truth announces itself subtly, often without words. In Taoist philosophy, the concept of harmony is central. The Tao is not something that can be grasped intellectually. It is something that is lived, sensed, and aligned with. Advanced Taoist practitioners described moments where the boundaries between inner and outer perception dissolved, accompanied by subtle sensory changes. These experiences were understood as signs that one was moving in accordance with the natural flow of existence. Again, sensation becomes language. Modern neuroscience, though often separated from spiritual discourse, has begun to acknowledge that perception is far more complex than once believed. Scholars such as Antonio Damasio have shown that consciousness is deeply embodied, arising not only from rational thought, but from sensation, emotion, and internal signaling. While science may frame this differently, it inadvertently supports the ancient intuition that inner experience carries meaning beyond conscious reasoning. What transforms the ringing from a curiosity into a catalyst is awareness. When ignored, it fades into the background of experience. When observed with presence, it becomes a doorway. Many practitioners across traditions describe a shift that occurs when they stop labeling the sound as intrusive and begin treating it as a moment of communion. Breathing slows, thought quiets, attention sharpens, something within listens. This listening is crucial because spiritual awakening is not an accumulation of information, but a process of remembrance. The soul does not evolve by adding layers, but by removing illusions. Each subtle signal serves as a reminder that there is more to reality than the surface narrative of daily life. The ringing acts like a bell, not to alarm, but to awaken. Ask yourself now, if the soul truly originates from unity, if it carries within it the memory of wholeness, then would it not respond when it senses that source nearby? Would it not vibrate, resonate, or signal recognition in some way? The ringing may be nothing more and nothing less than that moment of recognition. Yet there is a final layer to this mystery, one that surpasses symbolism and interpretation, a layer that addresses why this experience often intensifies during periods of personal transformation, crisis, or deep questioning. Why it appears when old identities dissolve and new awareness struggles to be born. This final understanding brings us back to the monad itself, not as an abstract concept, but as a living presence within consciousness. This is where all threads converge. And this is what we will explore next. At the deepest level of this exploration, we must confront a truth that many traditions hint at, but rarely explain openly. The ringing in the ears often intensifies during moments when identity itself is being reshaped. This is not accidental. Across spiritual lineages, transformation has always been accompanied by signs that bypass rational interpretation and speak directly to the core of awareness. Ancient initiates understood that the soul does not awaken gradually in a smooth linear ascent. Awakening unfolds in thresholds. Each threshold marks the dissolution of an old inner structure and the emergence of a new one. These moments are often accompanied by discomfort, confusion, and a sense that reality itself is shifting. The ringing, in this context, functions as a vibrational marker of transition. It signals that the psyche is crossing from one level of coherence into another. In Neoplatonic philosophy, this process was described as the soul turning inward upon itself. Plotinus explained that when the soul begins to recognize its separation from the source, it experiences fragmentation and longing, but when it remembers its origin, it experiences resonance. That resonance is not emotional alone, it is structural. Consciousness reorganizes itself and vibration follows. The ringing emerges precisely because the internal order is being recalibrated toward unity. This idea appears again in Gnostic traditions, where awakening was described as hearing a call from beyond the world. Gnostic texts often speak of a divine summons, an inner signal that awakens the soul from spiritual sleep. This call was not always auditory in the conventional sense, but experiential. It stirred recognition rather than delivering information. The ringing, seen through this lens, is the echo of that call reverberating through the layers of the self. Periods of existential questioning frequently coincide with this experience. When old beliefs collapse and certainty dissolves, the mind loses its familiar reference points. Yet it is precisely in this state of unknowing that deeper awareness becomes accessible. Many mystics warned that clinging to old identities blocks transformation. The ringing often appears when that grip loosens, when the soul becomes momentarily exposed to a greater field of intelligence. Carl Gustav Jung described this phase as the confrontation with the self, the totality of the psyche that transcends the ego. Jung believed that the ego resists this encounter because it threatens its illusion of control. However, when the ego yields, symbols arise that signal integration. Sensations, dreams, and synchronicities increase. From this psychological standpoint, the ringing becomes a somatic symbol of alignment between the conscious personality and the deeper self. What makes this phenomenon so unsettling for many is that it cannot be commanded or predicted. It arises spontaneously. This lack of control is precisely what gives it power. Ancient wisdom repeatedly emphasized that truth cannot be forced. It reveals itself when the seeker is receptive not when they are demanding answers. The ringing reminds the listener that awareness is not the author of reality, but a participant within it. In certain Sufi teachings, there is reference to an inner audition, a capacity to perceive divine presence beyond sound and silence. The Sufis taught that when the heart becomes purified of excess desire and fear, it begins to perceive subtle signs of the beloved everywhere. These signs are not dramatic, they are intimate, a sudden stillness, a gentle vibration, a sound without origin. Each one invites surrender rather than analysis. This surrender is essential. Many who experience ringing immediately seek to eliminate it or explain it away. Ancient initiates did the opposite. They listened. They observed without judgment. They allowed the experience to unfold without attaching meaning prematurely. Over time, patterns emerged. The sound often coincided with insight, clarity, or emotional release. It marked moments when truth passed through awareness before language could capture it. Ask yourself this honestly. Have there been times when the ringing appeared just before a realization, a decision, or a profound shift in perception? Have there been moments when it arose during silence, meditation, or deep contemplation? These correlations are not proof in a scientific sense, but they are evidence in an experiential sense. And experiential evidence was the foundation of ancient spirituality. Another crucial element must be addressed: fear. Many people fear the ringing because it disrupts normal perception. Fear contracts awareness and blocks insight. Ancient teachings consistently warned that fear is the greatest obstacle to awakening. When the ringing is met with fear, it becomes noise. When it is met with presence, it becomes signal. The difference lies not in the sound itself, but in the state of the listener. This brings us closer to the most profound implication of all. If the ringing accompanies moments of transformation, alignment, and remembrance, then it is not merely a symptom. It is a reminder that consciousness is not confined to thought, that the universe communicates through vibration, and that the soul is never truly cut off from its source. Yet one essential question remains unanswered. Why does this call seem to grow stronger as one moves closer to awakening? Why does it intensify when illusions fall away and truth draws near? The answer to this question reveals the deepest relationship between the soul and the monad itself. Thanks for looking.